Hi, folks. Welcome to Monday's edition of the I Write Radio podcast and videocast. We've got Jimmy Hutton with us today.
All right.
And Stuart Lockhead.
Hello there.
And I'm Norris Stewart. We'll do a quick purview of the press conference with the First Minister. And then we'll have a general sort of round of what's in the papers, what's been blogged. And I think our roving reporter in our mobile studio, Mr. Hutton, has got some first-hand information for us from the centre of Edinburgh today. So, Stuart, you and I watched the press conference. What did we think?
Well, I've got a question for you, because sometimes you watch the BBC version of it, the BBC One version, and you get to see the strange reaction show. And today, the reaction show was being hosted by that monster from yesterday, Gary Robertson. So did you watch that?
Well, I'll tell you what I did. I watched the whole press conference on Scottish TV, and then I flipped over on iPlayer and had a look at the SNP bad bit by the opposition leaders is usually about 10 to the hour.
Yeah.
So I turned it on, and it was Richard Leonard
God.
and Gary Robertson, and you know, I didn't even listen to it.
Oh, don't blame you. It must have been about devolution.
Well, the first question was, God, I can barely remember, but I remember thinking, I know exactly what he's going to say here, and what's the point? And it literally was word for word what I expected to come out his mouth, and I thought, nah, I'm not.
Okay.
My time's short enough as it is. I'm not wasting it on him.
All right, fair enough. Well, look, I've got a little bit of news. The first part of the press conference, the First Minister announced that she'd been on a wee trip to the Edinburgh Western General Hospital to visit a team preparing for the launch of the vaccination programme tomorrow. So and they were kind of all getting quite excited. You'd have thought it was Christmas coming. That's a bit cynical of me, isn't it? Eh? It is a vaccination.
Today's questions were all, oh God, I mean, if the government make decisions about what level you're going into, etc., every 3 weeks instead of every week, these guys wouldn't have questions to ask, because all they do is try and preempt what's going to be said tomorrow at Holyrood. Could you please tell us what the Borders is going to be in, what Edinburgh's going to be in? No, I'm not telling you until the decision's made, which will be made today and tomorrow, and it'll be announced tomorrow. How's that? Next question. Could you tell us what the south of Scotland's level they're going to be in?
Did you see? Well, look, she's
an idiot fest.
Look, she could actually tell them, look, I mistakenly said too much to the press last week, and I got scalped by the presiding officer. She got a row from the presiding officer last week.
Oh, while you're there, Stuart, could you tell me what the levels will be?
Yes, it's levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Oh, have nobody gone into level 5 yet?
Oh, hold it, you're wrong there. It's 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Oh, see, don't ask me then.
Zero's pre-2020. That's what 0 is.
Aye.
What else was?
Well, the one question I thought that was worth asking was, I think it was the Times guy who basically asked the question, all the vaccinators are getting vaccinated. Does that mean they're going to have to wait the 28 days before they start vaccinating? No, it doesn't, because the vaccination, we're not even sure whether it's going to stop you being infectious yet. So the PPE will be the protection for the vaccinators. So I mean, they'll go right into sticking needles in people's arms.
And it's you gradually get more after your first jag. You gradually get more protection as the weeks go by, but it could be up to 5 weeks, because it's a minimum of 3 weeks
12,
before you get.
It's 12 days from the first injection. You should start to get some protection. You've got to have your second jag within 21 days.
No, minimum 21 days.
Well, there's got to be a 21-day gap minimum. Yeah,
that's right.
And then you've got to wait a week after that. So it could be 28 days if you're lucky.
Up to 5 weeks.
And possibly 5 weeks.
Yeah. No, so but what else did we discover? We had one little bit of good news. She announced that 5%, which is the percentage of tests that are positive, that's the threshold at which the World Health Organization say that you should target, a government should target. So we are approaching that. That was good news. And then, as I said, the First Minister also made this journey to the Western General. Oh, no, I was nearly giving away Jimmy's story there, but you'll have to stay tuned for that. Sorry, I'm not giving that away.
You're up. Do you think I Write Radio could get a question to the First Minister? Okay.
Well, I don't see why Broadcasting Scotland do, but then I think they've got enough. They've got somebody up in the media tower at Holyrood.
No, that's all irrelevant. Just tell us what the question is, Jimmy.
Well, I'm intrigued, mate. When the Oxford vaccine gets the go ahead, they're going to start using that, obviously, because it doesn't need to be stored at -70. And I was wondering if we could get a deal and get a couple of these freezers that they're using, because I need one for the house to store my vodka. In the -70 freezers, I wonder if they'd give us a cheap deal on it.
I think that might be too much even for vodka, Jimmy. I think it might actually freeze the vodka. I think it might be cold enough to freeze the vodka.
I'd cuddle a bottle of frozen vodka until it's thawed.
Well, I think, there are things you can do with vodka, of course, because if you freeze it slowly, you can, what's the last bit of it to freeze is much stronger.
I'm not going into that.
Have you ever snorted vodka? Never mind, let's not go there.
But I met a man once that claimed he injected it.
I've never done that. I've done some silly things, but I've never done that.
I said claimed.
As a nice segue, talking of silly things, I seen a policeman behaving remarkably silly today in the centre of town, chaps.
This is your specialist reporting news.
Yeah, it's not really specialist, mate. It's all over the bloody internet by now. But Scotland had the joys of being visited by Wills and Kate today. And as their cavalcade, in fact, as the empty cavalcade was going into Waverley Station, something that no other vehicles are allowed to do, by the way.
Yeah.
The police outriders came up and they stopped a lassie crossing the road. Crossing Waverley Bridge. He literally parked his bike in front of her and said, "Wait, wait," he shouted at her as these empty vehicles went past to go and pick up the heir presumptive to the English throne. And they were off apparently out to Newton Grange to grace the Scottish Ambulance Service with a visit. Isn't it nice that the Saxe-Coburg family still think of the Oiks, want to show face now and again?
And they're allowed to break all the regulations, the travel bans.
Well, yeah.
It's not exactly essential. They're not key workers, you know.
That was a question that was asked, actually. I think was it the Express that asked the First Minister whether she thought they were breaking the law, or did she think it was worth it because it would be a morale booster?
I'm assuming she went to the Western because she couldn't get much further away from them than being that far north in the city without actually leaving the city.
That's what occurred to me as well, you know, just go to the Western General and get out of it.
I would consider it very unlikely that the royal family would be wanting to meet the First Minister in today's climate.
I suspect that she's a two-faced person, the First Minister, when it comes to the royal family. I suspect she's a Republican, but she will never admit it in public.
No, of course not. It's politics, isn't it?
She did. She said, if you want to speak to me, speak about the royal families, speak about the royal household, whoever they are. It's a bit like speaking to number 10 Downing Street.
Wills and Kate are part of the royal household.
Yeah, but I'd like to see the royal household. Who is it? I'd like to see them speak
Interestingly,
on camera.
that's a clever answer for her from her point of view, because she, in her official role, is referring to the entire royal family when she does that, and that's their official status. So she could talk about the royal household, but she would, if they asked her a question about the royal household, she'd then say, "Hold it, this is a health meeting." So
technically, the Queen can't break the law, can she? Because it's her law.
Well, it depends, Depends if she's in Scotland or not, because Scots law is not her law, is it?
I think it is. I think you still have to get the royal prerogative.
Anyway, I think the rumour's going to go around that we have suggested that the First Minister's a Republican because she ran away to the Western
Whoa,
General.
whoa, whoa, whoa,
Well,
whoa.
let me
Didn't
finish. Let me
Didn't he
finish.
drag me into the tower with you, mate?
Let me finish the rumor that she ran away to the Western General to get away from the royal family, so she wouldn't get compromised today. That's my accusation.
Jimmy and neither Jimmy nor I said anything about republicanism. That was you.
I reckon she just didn't want to get infected.
Well, I'm not spending Christmas in the tower.
I don't know, mate.
You go yourself.
I'd imagine it depends which part of the tower they put you in, mate. Put me in the jewel room, I'd be happy in there.
I'm not sure you would. Is it not a case of if you actually move, you get zapped with lasers? Or was that a Bond movie?
I think that's a Bond movie.
Possibly, mate.
I mean, whatever you do, didn't sneeze. That laser on the left's got you in its sights. Okay, serious stuff now. What have we been reading?
Well, Stephen Paton in the National. What did you think, chaps?
I can sum that up really easily.
Okay.
People who vote for the SNP that agree with me are right, and people that vote for the SNP that disagree with me are wrong. That's what the article said.
Well, basically,
he used an argument basically saying that SNP voters didn't know what they were talking about unless they agreed with him.
Robbie Burns told them 200 years ago, so you see yourselves as others see us. The accusations this man made in the National today about other people are the ones that are being made about him and his mates.
Aye. It's the Tory trick.
I mean, some in SNP need a reality check before they cost us independence. That's true. Internal party dramas within the SNP have become twisted with the fate of the independence movement itself. That's true. The trouble is, he goes on to blame everybody else but himself and his mates.
Aye, it was a bit of projection. There was also a bit of the argument that the trans allies use, shut you down, you shout transphobe at you the minute you disagree with anything they have to say. There is no argument, there is no discussion. They're right. Their viewpoint is correct.
Yeah.
And they won't have that discussion. I went and had a wee look at his Twitter feed and that, and frankly, it's outrageous.
Well,
he shouldn't be speaking for the SNP in any capacity, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I mean, I certainly remember him as an asset in 2014. I mean, he was part of that arts movement, and they did really good things.
They've done brilliant work, mate. But the unfortunate thing is, in fact, it's a debate they don't want to have. But the debate around trans people is very nuanced and very complex, and they are trying to reduce it because they don't want to have that debate to simply what we say is right, just go along with it. And unfortunately, the SNP leadership have gone along with that completely because they didn't want to have this argument either. So it's no way to debate because there is no debate. Frankly, it's a minority issue. Independence is far and away the most important thing on the minds of everybody in the Yes movement, apart from some very, very small minority cliques. I didn't even know why they get the coverage that they do.
I'm just really disappointed. Paton did a few things that were unusual. I mean, he was, I think, one of the first ones to do a videocast blog. He did good stuff, and I'm beginning to think we've got a real problem in the Yes movement with the bubble effect, where we're becoming entrenched in our own bubbles and unable to see out of them. Yeah,
it's difficult not to find echo chambers.
Yeah.
Particularly social media echo chambers. Twitter, indie Twitter. I tend not to look at it on a Friday or Saturday night now, once folk have had a few cans in that, because it's a horrendous place to be. Some of the nonsense that people come out with is just quite outstandingly ridiculous.
I mean, I do my best on Twitter. About a month ago, I tried my best to make sure I followed as many unionists on Twitter as I could. I ran through them all and make sure I'm following all these, just so I get some, outside my bubble.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I've no idea if they're just muting me when they see what I actually say.
I mean, the unionist independence bubbles, it's actually quite difficult to stay in an independence bubble when it comes to the news and the papers, because there is so much unionist propaganda out there in the mainstream media. So in a way, that's a good thing. It makes independistas very aware of what's happening
Yeah,
in the
it
world
tends
of
to
the
be-
unions.
It tends to be what the independistas are talking about is the unionist news and our take upon it.
Yeah. But I think with the SNP stramash, this factional thing, we need to find a way to burst the bubbles and get back to being one big bubble in which debate can take place freely.
Yeah, there has to be free debate, or politics is about debate. You can't just have one view.
Well, look at this view. The last paragraph of Stephen Paton's piece in the National, and he's talking about the opposition to his faction. He's not in a faction, by the way. It's only the opposition or faction. Their goal may not be securing independence at all, but rather, in the words of SNP MP Kirsty Blackman, who was deputy leader at the House of Commons this week, so that empire building can happen within the SNP. The opposition has got nothing to do with empire building. It's all about the pace of movement towards independence and annoyance with the factions, with the minority factions within the SNP.
Again, I think Kirsty Blackman's projecting. I think she was the one that was trying to build an empire. Perhaps we'll find out more. Maybe she was found out. That's why she decided to take a step back.
I mean, basically, I look at their arguments and you hold a mirror up to it and reflect it back to them.
Basically, yes.
And I have to say, there's a bit of that on the other side as well. I suppose our side, but we have to find a way, and it is important that minority voices get a good, solid platform to make their points. That has to be part of what this new NEC guarantees. All voices need to be heard, but we have to find a way not to allow any particular faction to run the whole show. Well,
Agreed.
that's not true, I suppose. The big factions inevitably end up doing that, but it shouldn't be driven by small factions. And I'm saying factions far too much.
Nice bit of self-criticism there.
Source, Commonweal's piece.
James Foley. Yes, another piece of backwards. Somebody else should be looking in the mirror. What's the headline? Contrary to received wisdom, in many ways, Sturgeon needs independence more than the independence movement needs her.
Mm.
That sounds like an interesting headline. You'd want to read that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and the article turns out to be more of the we need a left independence, not a centre independence.
Yep.
Or a right independence.
Yep.
So independence, Commonweal has always worried me. And I'm not talking about the individuals involved in Commonweal, who I do believe are independent people, the supporters of independence genuinely. And wouldn't have a problem with whatever democracy threw up in an independent Scotland. But they write an awful lot of these opinion pieces that just seem to say to me, it's a left-leaning independence or no independence. You know, it's not worth being independent unless it's my kind of independence.
I worry about Contour and Source, mate. I worry about the left in general. I mean, we know that Special Branch and 5 have targeted them since the late 60s. They've infiltrated them since the 60s. Are you not a bit concerned that, I mean, come on, Source and Contour, they're beautiful operations, fabulous website. Where did the money come from?
Yeah,
How did they get that sudden boost in money just around a year ago to bang these wonderful websites out there? Just when they'd seen off the left in the United Kingdom, the Tories had won the election. They didn't have to worry about Jeremy Corbyn or the left in England again for years. And all of a sudden, left-leaning figures in Scotland are finding a massive new tranche of funding. Is it just me that finds that a bit suspicious?
I don't know where the money came from. I do know Commonweal had quite a big drive for the wee folk to donate. The problem with the left has always been purity. You know, your purity isn't as pure as my purity kind of arguments. And it's something that has helped the Tories succeed and the right succeed. Because purity on the right is about power.
Yeah, it's obviously power and money, simple. Whereas
well, they want power.
People on the left are all got different principles, and they're never all going to agree.
Yeah, and the left
all
have
the right
principles.
ever concentrate on is getting power, because once they've got power, they can make money.
Yeah.
Then they have their arguments.
Or the other way around, if you've got enough money, you can buy power.
Well, they have their arguments once they've got power. Until that point, until they're actually capable of doing something, they tend to stick together.
It's why when Keir Starmer, I'm not sure he can come up to Scotland and lecture us now when he's going to offer us his latest Vow 3 or Federalism Mark 2.9 or whatever it is, because he's self-isolating, isn't he? But it's why when he comes up, you just say to him, look, whatever you have to offer, mate, you're never going to be in a position to offer it, because you ain't going to win an election.
Well, I mean,
so take it away and come back or at least come back when you can tell us how on earth you think you would get England to accept any form of federalism other than the one that they have at the moment.
Well, any form of federalism that would be acceptable in England would be a federalism of the counties. And it would be applied to Scotland as though Scotland was a county.
Mm-hmm.
So Scotland and Wales would be demoted in the hierarchy.
And over the last 20 or 30 years, they've broken up what they'd established, what Thatcher established in the way of reasonably sized local authorities in England by re-establishing the cities. The place, like Avon was a county which covered Bristol and the urban areas round about, but they broke it up. Wiltshire was an authority, but they took Swindon, the biggest city in it, out of it so it could run its own affairs.
It's what they've done for centuries in England, though, Stuart. They cannot allow anyone to have a power base out with London. So they'll build up major urban authorities, and then they break them up into smaller ones again. And then when the smaller ones get a bit antsy, they'll reform it again. But basically, it's all about maintaining London as the sole power base of the United Kingdom. And when I say the United Kingdom, I actually mean England, because they consider us as just bit parts stuck on.
Well, my answer to all this federalism is really simple. Show me the white paper. If you're not going to put it down in black and white and present it to the Commons and the Lords, forget it. It doesn't exist. It's pie in the sky. And they're never going to do that.
Labour have had a century, mate. They've not had power for a century, but they had a century in which, at times, they were the party of government. How many times have you heard them talk about House of Lords reform, and they've done absolutely sod all on that? They can't be trusted, ever again. If Scotland starts to vote Labour again, I'm off.
Where to, England?
Nah, mate. I think I would just buy myself a wee island off the coast and then start firing missiles full of sheep dung, because they have a few sheep in that.
Oh, don't get me started about that. There was a serious article about a lot of money. They're going to set up the RAF Space Command in Scotland.
Aye, I'll bet that happens.
No, they're going to. There's more chance of Jerry Anderson filming a new series, and that's not likely to
maybe.
No, Space Command, mate. Seriously, the UK Space Command.
Does that mean we'd become a spacecraft off the coast of America? For their space cadets?
What, instead of an aircraft carrier?
Aye.
Got to wonder who they would choose to run it. I mean, they'd have to find the biggest horse's arse on the planet that isn't a member of the current Conservative government and give him the job.
I've got a question for the two of you.
Mhm.
Is Thursday really the deadline for Brexit?
It's no. I think we may find that they can stretch it another week or so. Boris might want to hang it out over another weekend because he actually done no too bad this weekend in the press, didn't he?
Ah, that's true. He did. What was it? The Sun said, I can't remember what the headline was, but it was a definite good old Boris.
Did you notice how quickly they backtracked after somebody in Europe kind of let it slip that they'd virtually done a deal on fishing? My God, I've never seen backtracking like that since the Argentinians in 1982.
Look, the pair of you, you're just falling into this stupid media trap. They have nothing to report, so they're reporting nothing.
I just asked when the deadline was, Stuart.
Nobody seems to even know when the deadline is either. I mean, there was a deadline 5 years ago or 4 years ago.
Well, no.
We passed that one.
That deadline was for the agreement for the next deadline.
Look, the safest bet is the Tories are manoeuvring for a no deal, and they will make their friends will make a lot of money out of the no deal because they bet against anything else, and they will blame Europe for it, and that is what will happen.
I think there might be a last minute deal. I think there might be but it'll be such a shit deal that they'll still have to blame Europe for it.
Well, I know what their excuse on fishing will be. We couldn't use the extra capacity because we don't have boats enough. So that's I've already found them a way out of that.
And we don't have the processing factories. We shut one down in Scotland.
The wording around fishing yesterday when that bubble came out was very interesting. The European source talked about fisheries within Britain's 200-mile exclusive economic zone. Now, that 200-mile EEZ, basically, they're talking about Scottish waters. English, I mean, the west coast of England, yes. No, because you've got Ireland in the way. So the southwest coast of England might have a 200-mile EEZ, but it's only Scotland that actually has a lot of fishery in the 200-mile EEZ. So basically, they'd given them some kind of deal in Scottish waters and then had to backtrack pretty sharpish in case anybody actually found out about it.
I'm just intrigued where these fishermen are going to get all the boats from. All their new boats to fish all these extra fish that they won't be able to sell to Europe.
Particularly the boys down in Grimsby that sell their quota to the Dutch and took huge amounts of European Union funding to retire their boats. They got nice big grants for Brussels to do that after they sold their quota, and they still complained about it. And
is it the Welsh that have practically no Welshmen fishing at all? I think the Welsh quota's all gone to Spain, I think.
There'll be local fishermen, but I can't think of a large deep sea fishing port in Wales myself.
They'll have kept the prawns and whatnot of the 12-mile limit.
Well, just local fishermen. And
the in-coast fishery is actually very, very valuable. The problem with that is, again, 80% of it goes to Spain and France because we didn't eat shellfish in this country.
I mean, we've discussed this. I mean, we didn't necessarily agree, but if they don't get what they want, the French fishing boats will block Calais.
Yep, and that huge Dutch factory trawler will possibly park itself at Zeebrugge.
Been there a few times.
It'll make for an interesting wee week because isn't there meant to be another call for Boris and Ursula tonight? They're meant to come up with some deal today, aren't they?
God save us. You're spending too much time listening to all these.
Well, Stuart,
who've got nothing to say.
If it's turns out it's a no deal, I think that you're going to see support for independence over 60%, the next poll.
Yeah, but are you wishing for no deal?
From the point of view of Scottish independence, yeah. I don't think it'll make much of a difference to the man in the street. Your food's going to be more expensive. You're going to have hassle going on holiday. You know, there's going to be a lot of niggly little things.
Norrie,
The price of food is going to be quite important.
Norrie, 3 years ago when we discussed this, I was, generally speaking, most days I wanted Brexit because it was going to be, you know, it would mean where we are now with the support for independence climbing. But as we approach the possible deadline, and the First Minister even tried to inform us about the 60 medicines, just 60 medicines are going to be are having extra stocks arranged in case of a no-deal Brexit. What if your medicine's not in that list? And the supplies were only, the guaranteed supplies that they're building up on medicines, vital medicines, it's only for 6 weeks. I keep weeks supply of my bloody medication because it keeps me alive.
Yeah, but the idea is that 6 weeks will cover unforeseen stoppages.
It's scary what's going to happen.
It is, and as I say, that's the reason I think a no deal will.
Guys, I have to go.
Oh, good.
See,
Brought you
but
some
generally
luck.
good luck.
That's why I think we'll see support for independence shoot up by maybe 5 points.
Well, you could be right, but it won't make any difference because it won't make any difference to the current SNP HQ, will it? Not according to Stuart Campbell.
Oh, well, I hate Stuart Campbell. Do you know that?
I know, and
I wish he wasn't right all the time.
I quoted you yesterday saying that. And unfortunately, that's becoming, I'm going to quote you again on it, I'm sure.
Well, he's right. I can't remember the last time he got one of his predictions wrong.
It's appalling how right he is. It is so annoying.
Yeah. Well, I think if it hits 60%, they've got to do something. They have to have a plan, even if it's a stupid plan to deflect.
Yes, they have belief, and they ask us to have trust. Or so.
What are you going to do then, Stuart? Get rid of them?
I have no idea. I just think I'm frustrated. That's why I've got this strained expression on my face.
You're not allowed to be frustrated. You've got to have an answer.
Oh, I've got to have a plan. I don't have any power. I don't have a plan.
Well, if you don't have a plan that you're not going to be able to implement anyway, why are you upset that they don't have a plan that they're not going to be able to implement?
That's they've said that they've said they represent the people of Scotland who want independence. Well, they're not doing bugger all about it.
Technically, Stuart, they've got as much power as you have.
The only time I had power was on the 18th of September 2014.
Stuart, they're in exactly the same position as you. Constitutional issues are out with their purview.
No, that depends on your point of view. I don't accept.
Right, okay.
I don't agree with what Ruth Wishart, generally speaking, what Ruth Wishart, the general gist of her article today, but where she says, she made the point that, or maybe it was Leslie Riddick, but both of them have said it at this point, you know, it's like constitutional limitations on the ability of Scotland to decide its own future really were only limited from, say, 1997 on. Up to that point, it was the Treaty of Union that decided. There was the document of note that decided Scotland's position in this union.
Well, you know what my view on that is? Everything rests on the Treaty of Union. The Treaty of Union has been broken continuously over the years. So as far as I'm concerned, at any point they can turn around and say, right, you're not happy with it, you keep breaking it, let's renegotiate it. And the first thing we want is we get to call a referendum on independence anytime we want.
Right, but we have to discuss the elephant in the room. That one of our regular listeners and viewers, Lorna Campbell, posted a very reasonable piece yesterday, which you must have read. Criticism of your position, in which your position is that you don't believe that the British government have got spies inside the SNP and that they've been there a long time.
No, that's not my position. My position is that it's basically irrelevant whether they've got spies in the SNP or not.
Oh, right. It's irrelevant. So they're not been there. You don't believe that there could be people have been there so long that they're actually maneuvering policy
No, I don't.
carefully.
I think, and I also think anybody that does needs to go and see a psychiatrist.
Oh, you really are short on your history of politics. Machiavelli.
Well,
Go
Stuart,
and read The Prince.
I've read The Prince. I've read The Prince several times, and it was a different era in a much smaller polity. You were talking about city-states. You weren't talking about countries with 5 million people. This will be driven by the people of Scotland. And it doesn't matter whether MI5 are in there or
You
not.
sound as though you've got faith now. This will be driven by the people of Scotland.
It will be driven by the people of
At the
Scotland.
pulpit.
I'm not saying it's going to be tomorrow, but time will out on this one. And
No.
I'm sorry, but
No.
the fact that you want it to happen tomorrow is not going to make it happen tomorrow.
If people don't take action, nothing will happen.
You get out and build your barricade then, Stuart.
Well,
And give them the excuses they need.
Right. Well, if I get a terminal diagnosis of cancer, I might just do that.
You won't feel like it, mate. I can promise you. It's going to take the time it takes, Stuart. And it won't matter whether it's a plan B, C, D, or E. It is not going to happen in the next 12 months.
So what's your answer? What's your answer to Lorna Campbell?
Well, you know, my position has not changed in the last 3 years. And that is, your argument is you renegotiate the treaty of union. That's the way you do it.
Yeah, that's fair. But how do you
That's
reach
your
that
starting point.
How do you reach that point?
Well, you make a decision in the Scottish Parliament that you want to renegotiate the Treaty of Union, and they will refuse to sit down at the table and renegotiate, at which point you can withdraw.
I think I've got, but we're winding down.
Brexit is your precedent for that.
All right. We're getting towards the end of today's show. So I'm going to trail an interview I recorded yesterday with Barhead Boy, Roddy McLeod, and in which case he says, basically, you've got to configure, now he didn't use that term, but you've got to configure next May's election so that it becomes a plebiscite on the independence of Scotland. So that vote is a vote to negotiate independence. And if there's nobody there to negotiate, you see, if you make it's an election that the unionists cannot run away from. They're going to have to take part in the election, whether they like it or not. Whereas if you have an illegal referendum, they can refuse to turn up.
Yeah, but Roddy, like an awful lot of people, know full well that you cannot guarantee that every vote for the SNP is a vote for a referendum.
But you have to put it in you have to design the manifesto so that it's damn clear, so the people of Scotland know what they're voting for. Anyway, you've got to allow me to finish the trail for this, but I'll be posting this interview later on after I've posted this one, today's show. So look out for this on the site later today.
Just out of interest, are you ever going to interview anybody that doesn't agree with your position?
I'll prefer to argue with you, Norrie.
You mean, no, I'm not ever going to interview anybody that doesn't agree with my position.
They just refuse to turn up. So far, I was thinking of getting Duncan on. We'll see. Duncan, if you're listening, Duncan Hotherfield, it would be great to get you back on again. Or Ian McGill.
Right. Okay. We'll call it a day at that. Thanks for listening, folks. Thanks for being with me, Stuart. I'm Norrie Stuart, and we'll catch everybody tomorrow. Cheers for now.